Exposing the deep state and government overreach. You're with Pelle Neroth Taylor on today's News Talk, The Pulse.
Welcome to the Pelle Neroth Taylor Show. Well, incredible things going on in geopolitics at the moment. We're actually going to turn onto a story that's all too quickly receding into the distance, which is the Corona COVID scandal, pandemic of a couple of years ago. But its reverberations continue with the sentencing of Reiner Fuellmich, who's a German activist, and was part of this Corona committee, which was broadcasting on YouTube for hours at an end, a sort of latter-day, Watergate broadcasts. Hour after hour, people were seeing the truth for themselves with the testimonies from witnesses, doctors, experts, and all the rest of it, shredding the establishment view of what actually happened. Now, Reiner Fuellmich, who was a central figure in the German-speaking world in this scandal, has just been sentenced to a very long prison sentence, or a rather long prison sentence, and he's been suffering almost Julian Assange-like persecution. Now, the question is, was it justified? There are some people. I had Robert Sibis on, who was Reiner Fuellmich's producer on that live stream, and got to know him rather well, and he's rather skeptical. He was saying, well, he's a bit of a shady character, or a hero with clay feet, or whatever you want to call it, a mixed character. But if you read Reiner Fuellmich's own Substack and his activist friends, it's very much more black and white story of a single man being persecuted for taking on the deep state in Europe, in particular Germany. Well, with us today to talk about attempts to get him free and to bring his case to attention and really give us the inside story of what really happened when in his persecution. We've got Meike Terhorst, who's an attorney searching for the truth and standing up for freedom, as her ex-profile says. And she has been following the case very closely, as has Djamila, who's a journalist, an independent journalist, who is investigating. She worked very heavily on the Assange case, and sort of the Fuellmich case is your big project at the moment. So you can tell us, I think you've been to a lot of the court case out there in Germany, and they're both hailing from the Netherlands, and very, very pleased to welcome them today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Yes. It says here that in October 2023, Reiner Fuellmich was unlawfully kidnapped in Mexico by German government operatives. Since then, he's been imprisoned without due process in the high-security prison in Göttingen-Rosdorf. He's been shackled, placed in solitary confinement, and even denied the dignity of visiting his elderly mother as she lay on his deathbed. She passed away without a chance to see her son, whom she no doubt loved and was proud of. And then it goes on with a sort of lots of series of indignities. Meike, could you perhaps pick up on how this story started and what the official story is of his incarceration, and start to develop this idea of why it was a judicial murder, if you like?
Yeah, well, I can maybe briefly go into how I know Reiner Fuellmich. I was together with Reiner in a group of Children's Health Defense. It's called the PCR group because we all thought that the PCR tests are the true key to unlocking all the secrets of the pandemic. And so every Thursday we would meet and we get guests on, experts, doctors, scientists, and so on, journalists, would tell us their experience with all kinds of interesting subjects. And so as part of this bigger group, I got to know him, and he told us what he was doing and what he was investigating. And I thought he came across as a very honest lawyer and a fearless one as well. And so I have a lot of. I thought he was just a great person to also have on the group. And he told us, like in 23, that he could not stay in the US anymore because his bank accounts were frozen and he had to leave. And he was staying with friends with his wife in Mexico. And then later on, we were informed that he was kind of kidnapped and taken to Germany. So that was very strange. And at the time, I thought it was very, very awkward that anything like this could happen to a lawyer. Because as a lawyer, you're very protected by the law to do your job and he could, as a very famous one, he has done some really big court cases against Volkswagen and Deutsche Bank. So he's one of the most famous German lawyers. He could be kidnapped like this by the Dutch German secret police and taken to Germany and put into prison. It was very weird. And there was a lot of insecurity because there were some rumors that he had done all kinds of things wrong. So there, in the group, it was not very clear at the moment what had happened, whether he had done something wrong or not. But like with a few, we really felt like it sounds like we really sound like the rat smell. So we didn't trust it. And then we got some information about the German leaked file from the German Secret Service. Djamila can tell more about this. That he was kind of trapped. He had fallen in a trap of the German Secret Service. And I found it, I was reading Djamila's articles in our biggest alternative newspaper in the Netherlands called the Other Newspaper. And I was feeling kind of sick hearing all these dreadful stories about Reiner Fuellmich, like being treated awfully and also being put in solitary confinement and so on. And I thought it was just unacceptable, and I really wanted to do something. So together with Djamila, we set up a letter which was signed by many people, also Mark Trotzi and Shabnam Palezi Mohammed from World Council for Health and others, and Vera Sharaf. So to ask the Special Rapporteur on Torture of the UN to look into Reiner's case, because the UN can kind of overstep the German court system and ask for questions with the prison that he is in, but also with the court. And so it's a kind of brilliant legal way to kind of somehow get attention to this horrible situation. And we sent a letter already in December 16th to the Special Rapporteur, but we did not receive any reply. And only through some help from people, a kind woman in Geneva, we were able to kind of officially hand it in. So from last Monday, it's officially handed in, and now they are working on this request.
Right, Djamila, you said that you knew a little bit more about this dossier that the German intelligence or the German police had assembled.
Yes. Well, Reiner has several lawyers. There's Katja Wurmer, who's the main lawyer, and then there's Christophe Miseret. He is a lawyer. I forget where he's from, and then there's a third and fourth lawyer. And in the background, there's somebody advising, another lawyer. And Christophe Miseret, he at one point got information from a source who told him that in 2021, there had been a sort of an order given by the Verfassungsschutz, which is the internal intelligence agency in Germany, to find a way to be able to criminally prosecute Reiner Fuellmich, so that he would never be able to hold a political position ever. And this has to do, I think the context, Meike already touched on it. Reiner Fuellmich had done a lot of big cases. So he was already not, the government's most favorite lawyer in the world. And he already had problems with bank accounts. They would constantly use the excuse of suspicion of whitewashing to cancel or close a bank account, and he would start a new one, etc., etc. So he already was juggling, his financial, even though he had a proper office and he had lots of people working for him, he did size down a little bit over the years, but he had a running lawyer's practice. And so when Corona came, he was already very suspicious of the government because of all those big cases he'd done. He knew immediately that this didn't make sense. So then he met three other lawyers, one of them being Viviane Fischer, who came to him through Wolfgang Wodark, who is the ex-parliamentary member, but also a medical guy, And they suggested to start a platform to invite people, experts who had another story, who had other facts to tell people what was the alternative or other possibilities of seeing reality. So that's what they did. And they had planned to do it for 3 weeks. And for 3 weeks, about 8 sessions, and then they would stop because they thought then everybody's informed. And of course, the whole Corona affair will be done and dusted and will carry on. But there was such an interest in this platform, and people started donating money. Millions came in, 3-point-something million they received. And there was such a need. I mean, for me personally as well, I was really hungry for the information that came from the Corona Investigative Committee. And it was done every week. They would interview people. They would invite a couple of people, one after the other, and they would talk maybe for 2-3 hours or, sometimes longer. So that was hugely successful. And then 2 other lawyers joined. So 4 lawyers were running this platform. And at the same time, Reiner Fuellmich decided to do a class action suit to see if he could somewhere in the world start this to fight the PCR test, because that's what Meike said, that was the key. If you could prove that the PCR test was faulty, which it is, and then the whole Corona story was gone. We wouldn't be talking about false positives and asymptomatic infections, blah, blah, blah. So he did that with yet another lawyer called Marcel Templin, who will be important later on. They sort of fell out because Marcel Templin made a mistake. So that all collapsed. And he just did the class action suit on his own, trying to get groups in other countries or groups that already were doing the same to join them. But his main work in the meantime was this platform together with Viviane Fischer and Justus Hofmann and Antonia Fischer. And so the last 2, they fell out quite soon. They didn't do any organizational work. They showed up for half the sessions. They never asked many questions or not at all. And so soon, Viviane Fischer and Reiner Fuellmich decided those 2, it doesn't work. Let's split. So at first, there was an agreement that they would step out. But all of a sudden, in December 2021, I think, Antonia Fischer and Justus Hofmann came back and they said actually they wanted part of the donations. In the statute of the platform, it was written that the money was only to go to the broadcasting or to the podcasts, not to the people. So Reiner didn't want to have any of it, and the atmosphere was already not superb. So that sort of escalated, and in the end they pulled away, and that was that. Then Reiner Fuellmich joined a new party, the political party Die Basis. That's where the Verfassungsschutz document relates to. And he became the front runner together with Viviane Fischer. And within weeks, they gathered 30,000 members. And it looked like he was going to make a really good chance to get into the Bundes parliament. And so in the summer of 2022, both the Basis sort of collapsed, mainly also to do with the collapse of the platform, because Viviane Fischer at one point closed his access to the platform, told the hundreds of thousands of people viewing that he had something to justify or to make right. And everybody was shocked and in bewilderment and believed her because, she seemed trustworthy, and he didn't have a platform anymore. Of course, he couldn't bring his side of the story, which we know from lectures at Chatham House. I think Meike knows who I'm referring to, but we know that this is a practice they do. You take the microphone first, and then the audience is sort of on your side immediately because you're like little ducklings, following their mother. So in the end, Reiner did get a platform with Bittel TV to say his side of the story. So, but by that time he was quite angry. So not all of those explanations came out very well because he was just too angry by the betrayal. Viviane Fischer and he, together with the Basis, had agreed to that they wouldn't throw out the dirty laundry. You know, they would cover it up, they would solve things inside and not go outside. And yet she twice went outside with it, and once very close to the elections. And that sort of made everything collapse. So knowing this document from the Verfassungsschutz, then of course there are questions raised, like what was everybody's role in this? You know, was he meant to be destroyed just before the elections and whatever? So that's basically the framework.
Yeah, I mean, begs the question then, if some of these people, I don't know if it's liable to mention their names, but these people who seem to be on his side and part of his Corona committee were inserted by the intelligence agencies to blow the whole thing up and destroy Fuellmich. We'll talk about that after the break.
Get your favorite merchandise from our official The Pulse shop. You'll find exclusive online t-shirts, mugs, hats, hoodies, and more at thepulse.today.
Put the keys down, Kevin.
But I'm gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
My text to emoji ratio has gotten a little out of hand.
A little?
Yep, I'm definitely gonna call a ride home.
Sometimes life can be overwhelming, and suicide may seem like the only way to relieve the pain. Beyond Now is an evidence-based app created by Beyond Blue to help you cope when suicidal thoughts start to appear. You can use it to create an easy-to-follow plan that is personal to you and includes steps like know your warning signs so you can act early, make your environment safe by removing harmful items, activities you can do or people you can be with to distract yourself from suicidal thoughts, reminders of things that make you feel strong. Some of these steps might be tough to fill out, and that's okay. It can be helpful to make or share your safety plan with a trusted friend, family member, or mental health professional. You might feel like you're alone, but help is available. If you're worried you can't stay safe, use the red telephone icon to call your emergency contacts. Download the free Beyond Now app today to create your personal safety plan.
Free speech is alive and well on today's News Talk, The Pulse.
Welcome back to the Pelle Neroth Taylor Show. We've got Meike Terhorst and Djamila, who are friends or activists on behalf of Reiner Fuellmich, who's a sort of extremely well-known lawyer and Corona activist in Germany who's been jailed for a couple of years now. And we just been talking before the break about whether the German intelligence service, domestic intelligence service, had inserted a kind of saboteur inside the system there to take him down because he was a kind of threat to the German intellectual and intelligence and NATO establishment. Make it. I mean, do you think? You followed this story now that there might have been a saboteur. Was it Viviane Fischer or someone else? What evidence is there for that, or is it just speculation?
Well, there's no evidence, that you can say, okay, here's a document saying that Marcel Templin was instructed or so. But Marcel Templin is very important because he and Justus Hofmann, who was connected to the Corona Committee, but Marcel Templin wasn't. He only had to do with the class action suit. Yet Marcel Templin is also one of the three that handed in the charges. And he has no right to the money because he was never part of Corona Investigative. So that's already very strange why he is a party in this, or not officially, because it's a public prosecutor who's actually prosecuting, not them. But he's also the one, because at a certain point, because of the money being in a bank account, they were warned to not leave it there, but to put it away. So if the government confiscated the money, then not everything would be gone, So what they did is they invested $1 million in gold and they took loans out. So Reiner Fuellmich took out 200,000 and 500,000 in the loan, and Viviane Fischer took out 100,000. And they could do whatever they wanted, but of course the idea was that it shouldn't be in a bank account, which is exactly what is claimed in court, that he should have kept it in a bank account. But, Reiner Fuellmich keeps arguing, but that was the whole point. We had to take it out to keep it safe. So he invested it in his money. He got a lot of blame for that he built a pool and a hot tub and everything. And everybody said, he just lived a happy life with the money. But it wasn't that way. He had this pool and everything built. He was in the rubbish. And just 1 or 2 months before the sale of the house, it was all finished. And then it was sold as this luxurious property, but he never had the pleasure of it, or, 2 months of it. But when the transaction came through of the house, then he was going to pay back the loan. That was the deal. They would have to pay back within a year. It took a little bit longer, but both of them had to pay it back. But Marcel ten Pleen then, with Justus Hofmann, somehow, we don't know really how, pressured the solicitor and the buyer of the house to transfer 1.158 million of the 1.3 million to an account of Marcel ten Pleen, who had nothing to do with the whole thing. And that was the reason that Reiner couldn't pay back the loan, because he only got I don't know, whatever left of that amount, 400,000 or 140,000 back. So he couldn't pay it.
Wow.
And the judges never said anything. They did say, yeah, that seems to have been an illegal transaction, a legal deed by Marcel ten Pleen, but that's your problem. You should have paid back the money. It's like a crazy rationale.
Right. So he's going to pay back the money from the committee that he borrowed from the sale of a house, and then his lawyer kind of finagled this and fixed it so that he got the money instead. I mean, How can I don't know? I mean, couldn't Fuellmich sue or something? And who is this?
But they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything with it.
Wow.
It's
So
it sounds like a complete setup, and so obvious one as well. And it's just annoying to see that still on Twitter there are messages saying that he's not honest and so on. Well, this has been clear from a very long time now that Marcel ten Pleen is holding this huge amount of money without any entitlement. And so there is, in my mind, there cannot be a legal reason to blame Reiner Fuellmich for not paying back the money, because he was kind of scammed, you could say, by his own notary, we call it in the Netherlands.
Just sorry, we've got 3 minutes left. So, and then there was a senior prosecutor who was going to take on the case, and he thought this smells bad, and so someone got an inexperienced prosecutor from another town, and that he prosecuted. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that sounds like another infraction on his right.
That has to do with something else. There were payments made to his lawyer's office for work that the lawyers did for the Corona Ausschuss, because there was so much mail, so much telephone and organizational work. So they did some work. He paid them for it, and that was paid by monthly payments, not every month the same, but it was paid. So that was the first attempt to get him to prosecute him. So it was put before the chief public prosecutor. It was a she, and she looked at the things and she said, but this was all used for Corona Ausschuss. You can discuss, maybe could it have been 5 cents more or less, but it was all used for what they said in their statutes that it was going to be used for. So I see no reason to prosecute. So she put it away, and then they went to Berlin to say, we'll try it there. But in Berlin, they said, well, the company you're talking about is never officially registered. They never finished the registration. So these are just a bunch of people, a bunch of private people doing this. So I have no reason to do anything with this company frame. So it went back to Göttingen. Then it was put to the chief public prosecutor again. And she then asked a question like, well, is there then new evidence or new proof? And then it was quiet, and a new junior public prosecutor came, transferred from Hanover. And we don't know where this chief prosecutor has gone to. She just went.
Wow.
So there is no direct proof, but there are all these very strange happenings.
Very strange. Well, Meike, I mean, how would you conclude? What are the next steps? I mean, you're assembling a case here that, on the surface of it, I'm not a lawyer, seems very suspect. How can we the truth seekers construct a case against the German state? And where are you going next?
Well, I'm not an expert at German law, so I cannot say like how they should do it. But I would suspect like he would appeal from this conviction, and you would expect something to be done against Marshall Templin, because it's, and also like this leaked file from the Secret Service, perhaps that could be done, something could be done against this to maybe write to the German Bundestag, the parliament, to ask their help, because it's illegal to kind of prosecute a lawyer. A lawyer is a protected kind of job, so yeah, it sounds very much like he's kind of blocked in doing his work as a lawyer or politician.
Yeah. Well, the legal procedure for the appeal is that the court now has about 17 weeks to formulate their written statement. So that will be August at the latest. And then the defense has a month to react, and it's only a written reaction. There's no hearing in the appeal. It's only a written exercise. And then there's some time afterwards, then there's the verdict. And then there's a second case, of course, but we can talk about that another time, because there's no time left.
Well, I mean, an incredibly interesting story, and you told it in very great detail and in a very persuasive and interesting way. And I hope everyone checks this out, and we'll follow any updates on it with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Meike Terhorst and Djamila.
Thank you.
This is the Pelle Neroth Taylor Show. We'll be back after the break.